Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, thanks for stopping by. My name is Amarachi. I'm a grad student in the US, and on this channel I share useful tips about moving to the US as well as documenting my grad school journey. So if this is something you're interested in, please consider subscribing if you aren't subscribed already. In today's video, I'm going to be going over the most commonly asked F1 US student visa interview questions. So before I even start, I would like you to know that generally the visa interview process or the questions revolve around three main areas. So they're trying to, one, determine the legitimacy of your purpose, or like basically see, are you really going there to study or do you have other plans when you arrive? Two, they're trying to determine your financial capabilities. So can you fund yourself when you get there, not just your tuition, but your cost of living as well, because they don't want people who are going to come to the US and become liability to the system. So yeah, there's that. And the final thing is home ties. They're trying to determine whether or not you would return back to your home country after your studies. Something else I also have to say is, when answering these questions, please try to be as specific as possible. And two, before going for your interview, make sure that you've done your research. Do your homework on the school, on your course, on your responsibilities at the school. If you have any, just make sure that you're very well prepared and you've done your homework. So throughout this video, I'm going to add timestamps so you can skip to a specific question if you want to, but if you are not looking for the answer to a specific question, then you could just watch the entire video. So the first question is, why are you going to the US? It's a very straightforward question, and your answer should be as simple, as specific as possible. A sample answer would be, I'm going to the US for my master's degree in psychology with a concentration in child psychology. Very simple, very straight to the point. The second question is, why this university? This is such a common question. At this point, please don't say, oh, this university is the only one that admitted me. No, this is your opportunity to show that you've done your homework. This is your opportunity to really sell that university to the viewer, like explain why, like what is the reason that made you choose this university. So it could be various reasons, like, oh, the professor I'll be working with, is at this university and they do XYZ kind of research, things like that. Or you could even have something very, very specific to you. So in my video on my visa interview story, I'm going to link it in this video here. I talk about how I was asked this question and I gave a very, very specific answer for me. Visa officers are tired of hearing the same generic responses over and over again. So if you can be as specific as possible and talk about something that draws you personally to this school, then do that. The third question is, what is your highest degree of qualification? So if you are going for a master's or a PhD and you already have a master's, then you can say this like, oh, I have a master's degree in, I don't know, XYZ business administration or whatever. However, I would say that if you already have a master's degree and you're going for another master's degree, be ready to defend why you need this second master's degree. So like really come prepared to convince the viewer, like, oh, even though I have this master's degree, this one is super, super important, and it's going to be beneficial to me and to my career in the long run. Just be prepared to convince the visa officer that you're not using this second master's degree as a front to like run away from your country. The fourth question is, what would you be working on, or what is your research interest? So this is your opportunity to tell the visa officer exactly what you'll be working on. For example, not just what you'll be working on, but also talk about who you'll be working with. So for example, you could say, I'll be working with Professor, I don't know, Bill Nye the Science Guy, on developing new catalytic methods to convert biomass to oils or fuels or whatever, but be specific about what you're talking about here. However, also don't like just mumble or just put together a random group of words to make a sentence. Be sure that you know what you're talking about, because it's very common for the visa officer to now go ahead and pick on something that you've said. So for example, if you said, oh, I'll be working on catalysis, the visa officer can go ahead to ask, oh, really, catalysis, what is that about? Tell me a little bit more about that. And here again is your opportunity to show that you know what you're going to be working on. You've done your research, explain to the visa officer, explain like you're explaining to like a curious 10-year-old child, for example. So very simple words, very basic terms. Again, don't lie and like don't start to put things together in your head that you're not sure of at that moment, for two reasons. You never really know who these visa officers are. So visa officers actually go to university, like they have a regular school program until they decide to become diplomats, and they, you know, get assigned to different tasks. So you might actually be talking to somebody who is well versed in this area, and they know what it is that you're supposedly going to be working on. So you definitely don't want to, you know, just like, I guess you don't want to be unsure of what you're talking about. That's on one hand. Or on the other hand, even if they don't know your field, they don't know anything about it, they can be looking it up on the internet as they ask you the question and as they listen to you respond to this question. So just be prepared and be sure that you know your stuff. Next question is, what will this program do for you? So this is your opportunity to talk about how this program is going to be beneficial to you and to your career. I would say it probably is in your best interest to talk about, mention it like very specifically that, you know, this program is going to help you when you go back to your home country. Perhaps you're going to learn or you're going to study something that would help solve a specific problem in your home country. Mention this as well. So talk about the skills or the experience that this program is going to expose you to, or even the connections, like international connections, that's going to expose you to as well. The next question is, what are your plans upon graduation? Please don't start talking about, oh, I'm going to use my OPT and try to find a job in the US. No, you are going back to your home country to take up a career or to start a career as XYZ. So for example, if someone who is going for a PhD is asked, so what are your plans upon graduation? You would say, I will return back to my home country to take up a position as an assistant professor at my alma mater, or something along those lines. The next question is, how many schools did you apply to? Here, say the number of schools that you applied to, but I would say even take it a step further. Don't just stop. So if they ask you how many schools did you apply to, don't just say, oh, I applied to 5 schools and that's it. You could say, I applied to 5 schools and they are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you know, say the names of the schools, and also talk about which of these schools you got admitted into. Especially if you got admitted into more than one school, mention this. The next question is, how did you hear about this school? So here you can talk about the source from which you heard about this school. It could be like US News, Grad Cafe, maybe Education USA if you have that in your country, or even like a mentor or an undergrad advisor. These are also good avenues to hear about schools, especially if these people, like if they're actual human beings, a mentor or an advisor, are alumni of that school. Then it's like a good selling point, or it's a good way to say that you heard about a school. The next question is, how do you plan to fund your studies? So everybody's situation is different. If you have full funding, then that's great. Like they have your I-20, they can see. They probably won't even ask you this question if you have full funding. But if you have some sort of deficit or no sort of funding at all, now this is your time to talk about who is going to fund your studies. If you're self-funded, like your own personal savings, say that. Or you could say, you know, my cost of attendance is going to be, or my studies are going to be funded by my parents, and that's it. However, if your sponsor is somebody who is not your parents, so maybe an uncle or an aunt, you have to really convince the VO that this person truly is going to be funding your studies. So don't just say, oh, my uncle or aunt is going to fund my studies. So you could say something like, oh, my uncle, who has been the one taking care of my education since my childhood, or since, I don't know, the loss of my parents or whatever, is committed to funding my studies throughout my stay in the US. Usually this question would lead to the next question, which is what does your sponsor do and how much do they earn? Do not lie, and again, be prepared. You need to know what your sponsor does. If they're a businessman or woman, say this. If they're, you know, like if they have a regular 9-to-5 job, say this. You need to know what they do for work, and you also need to know how much they earn. So in Nigerian terms, for example, if your sponsor happens, this is just like a random example, if your sponsor happens to be, say, a teacher, you can't say, oh, my sponsor is a teacher and they earn 1 million naira monthly. how many teachers in Nigeria earn 1 million naira monthly? Like, these visa officers are not stupid. They actually live in your country and they have an idea of what salary ranges are for specific professions. So, you know, just don't lie about this. Be as straightforward as you can. The next question which you might have is, what qualifies you for a tuition waiver, or what qualifies you for you know, this assistantship or something like that. Here it's an opportunity to sell yourself. So you could say something like, oh, I had my excellent undergrad grades qualified me for this. Or if you're going for a bachelor's, you could say like your excellent SAT scores, or even your GRE scores, you know, something like that. So you could say something like, my excellent undergrad grades coupled with my excellent GRE scores helped me get a research assistant position with Professor XYZ, and this position comes with a tuition waiver as well as a monthly stipend. So just explain, because you know the visa officer doesn't know you personally, but you know your story. Don't start saying like 5 minutes long story, but you know, in very short sentences, like 2 or 3 sentences, explain why you have this funding or why something is waived for you, like your tuition or something like that. The next question is, do you have any relatives in the US? So in this case, so in my opinion, like in my experience as well, what they mean by relatives is your father, your mother, your siblings, so your brother, your sister, and first cousins, maybe, and aunties and uncles. Nigerians, Africans, I mean your actual literal auntie and uncle, not that your mother's friend from childhood who has now become your auntie. You know, we call everybody auntie and uncle, or that random relative from your village compound. No, this is not what they're asking about. And something to note here though is that when you're filling your DS-160 form, be sure that you've already said that you have a relative in the US if you're going to say yes on your interview day. So I have a video, I think 12 tips to help ace your F1 visa interview. I'm going to link it here as well. In that video, I talk about how you need to be sure that what you're saying corresponds to what you have filled out in your DS-160 form, because they're going to be looking through that as well. Again, on this issue of having a relative, please check with these people or whoever it is that you plan to include to be sure that, one, they're okay with it, or they're just aware, because you definitely don't want to include somebody whose immigration status in the US is like questionable. I feel like that's just doing some sort of harm to yourself. So please check with these people and be sure that you could actually include them in your DS-160 or talk about them during your interview. In addition, I'd say also know where these people stay, at least know the state in the US that they live in. Another question that you can get is, why the US, or why not study this course in your home country? If you're going to study a very peculiar, specific course, then it could just be something, your reason could be as simple as, oh, this course isn't available in my home country. Again, these visa officers live here. They have an idea of what courses are or not available in your country, so don't lie. Or you could also just talk about how, you know, you just want the best quality of education out there, and you know the US has one of the highest levels of education. You could also talk about the international exposure that this is going to give you, or the connections that you're going to make, and tie it back to your home country. So talk about how these connections are going to enable you, like, solve XYZ problem when you come back to your home country, or help position you for a better career when you return to your home country. Always tie it back to coming home. The next question is, where would you be staying? So if you already have, if you've already sorted out your accommodation, you could say that. So either like a student dorm or on-campus accommodation, or if you already have like an apartment, you could talk about your off-campus accommodation as well. If you have this, they might ask you for the address. So be sure that you know the address of this place and tell it to them as well. The next question is, have you ever been to the US? Very simple, straightforward. If you have been, say yes. If you haven't, say no. they have your records. They can literally see if you've ever been granted a US visa before, if you've been denied as well. So just say yes or say no. It's fine. I don't really think that the answer to this question is one that would really make or mar the decision to grant you a visa. I think it's just like one of those questions that they ask. The next question that you could also get is, have you ever traveled abroad? If you have, say yes and say what countries that you've been to. If you haven't, then say no, I haven't had the opportunity to up until this point. And the final question that I'm going to go over here is, why should I grant you this visa? I think this is such a trick question. It like helps you really analyze and think about like, why do I really need this visa? But this is an opportunity to basically talk about how this like studying in the US is really going to take your career to the next level. Talk about again the international exposure, connections that you would get, how it's going to set you up for your career or future goals, your professional goals. Just explain why studying in the US would be beneficial to you and to your home country as well. So that's it for this video. I think I went over 18 different questions that you can be asked on your interview day. Honestly, most of these questions, like chances are at least 1, 2, or 3 of your questions are going to come from these 18 that I've gone over. So I would say practice for your interview. Practice by yourself. So look at these questions, get a pen and a paper or type it out something, write down these questions, write down your responses and practice your responses. So practice by yourself, even better practice with someone else, because it's one thing to think that you know the answer to a question in your head. It's something else to actually open your mouth and say it out. Sometimes when you start to talk, you realize, oh, maybe wait, I don't really like this, is a little bit rusty, I need to work on this. So I would really advise practicing with someone if you can. If you don't have anybody to practice with, that's fine as well. You could just practice in front of the mirror. It kind of does the same thing. So when you figure out the areas where you need work, really focus on working on these areas as well. I have a different video, 12 tips to help you ace your interview. I'm going to link it in the description box. I already also linked it somewhere, so it's going to be one of the info cards in this video. Please check that out. That video also has a list of all the documents that you need to take with you during your interview, so it's definitely very helpful. If you have any specific questions that I didn't get to, please leave it in the comments and I'll try to get to it. However, disclaimer, I can't and I won't answer questions that are pertaining to your personal situation. Also, I definitely won't answer any questions that require you to do your own research. If you ask a question like, oh, I got admitted into this school, what should I say is my reason for why this school? Do your own research on that. I'm not going to do that for you. But if you have any specific questions, please leave it in the comments section below and I'll try my best to get to all the questions. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a like, leave me a comment, subscribe and turn on the notifications as well so you know when I post a new video. If you found this video helpful, please share it to everyone who you know is going through this process or has their interview coming up. Good luck to everyone and I hope that you get your visas approved. Take care and I will see you in the next video.